what most people do when we see in regards to plea bargains is that people accept guilty pleas. They admit guilt in hopes that everything that they have just sustained or they imagine will sustain, the process will be sped up and then everything will go back to normal. But the thing is, things never go back to normal. An admittance of guilt in the court of law, they don't care about the dynamics around it. They don't care about the circumstances that led you to admit guilt. You could sit here and say during this time, 1912, 1913, that I was coerced into giving a guilty plea. They would not give a damn, because at this time it was very common for Black people to be coerced into admitting guilt due to the threats of lynching, harm to their family and stuff like that. It's the same thing we see in regards to immigrants and deportation, where people falsely believe that a lot of them are involved in criminal activity, and it's just not true. Majority immigrants evade any dealings with people, especially criminality, because of the fact that they are afraid of deportation. And even those that are first generation born here and so forth, they are less likely to participate in those activities as well, because it's a protective mechanism for their families, for themselves, their loved ones. It's a mode of survival, right? And so people admit guilt, or they subject themselves to standards that they wouldn't normally subject themselves, like immigrants subject themselves to crime and to sustain crime without ever getting any help, because they're not going to reach out to the cops in fear of their lives just falling apart. Deportation, motherfucking incarceration, all of the above. You see what I'm saying? And so in this instance, when you have a gentleman admitting guilt, it doesn't necessarily mean he did it. Even today in 2025, we see these same immoral and unethical practices still being carried out. You could check your local jail census and see the amount of people that are held in their pretrial detention, and they have never even been brought before a judge to rule whether or not their arrests were made lawful. A majority of the people held in jail currently are held there unlawfully. And because of the circumstances, because they're just sitting there like these individuals, they're sitting there, they're in fear, they're stripped from their freedoms, lives, and liberties, and they're in fear that the worst is going to happen, which is pretty much a lynching over something that they had nothing to do. They're more likely to admit guilt because I would rather speed this process up than to deal with the stress, that comes with just sitting and waiting to find out what's going to happen. 1912, and here we are in 2024, and these tactics still happen. People think corruption just fell apart within the criminal justice system. No, it just became more covert, right? Many of us were aware of it earlier on. Most of us, a good portion of us, are blind to it. We are oblivious to it currently because, one, we don't have any dealings with it. Two, because society has pushed these fallacies into thinking that the criminal justice system is not as jacked up as it used to be, as raggedy as it used to be, because of all these reforms. And then there's these reforms that we can't even articulate what they are, because we don't even know what they are. Interesting. But anyways, earnest confessing a crime don't mean squat, but let's continue. If you want people to think otherwise of you more positively, then give them more positive experiences.